Hello, Dale McDermott here with the CGLCC and welcome to the 2020 Digital LGBT Plus Global Business Summit. Before we get started on the session, CGLCC would like to recognise our presenting sponsor TD Bank Group, along with all of our gold and silver sponsors and all of our sponsors for helping us to make this event happen. We would also like to recognise our translation partner AI Media for enabling us to deliver live caption translation in 3 languages, English, French and Spanish, and you can access those using the links below in the description box. I'd also like to draw your attention to the left-hand side of your screen to the networking and exhibit hall tabs, where over the course of the next 5 days you can connect with LGBT plus businesses, corporations and each other to help drive that power of connection. And finally, if you do like the content we are producing, please feel free to make a financial contribution using the donate link in the description box below. Thank you and enjoy your session.
Good morning, and thank you, Dale, for those remarks. It is great to have you all joining us today. My name is Daryl Sherman. I'm the CEO and co-founder of the CGLCC, and welcome to the all-inspiring session called LGBT Tourism Program Informational Session. That is perhaps the most dry title for a session, and so I'm thankful that you all decided to join us despite the name of this session. We do have a great topic here, and I'm really glad that you're able to join us. So we know that the LGBT global travel market is big. It's valued at over $200 billion US annually, providing huge opportunities for tourism operators. But we also know that it's more than just slapping a rainbow sticker on the front door. There's more work that needs to be done to be ready to serve this market, just as there is with any other market operators might decide to actively target. So what we wanted to do this morning is really talk about the importance of this market, why destinations and businesses should strongly consider targeting this market, and then highlight some of the ways and opportunities that they can do this. So with me this morning are Philip Mondor, the President and CEO of Tourism HR Canada, and Mina Iyer, Senior Data Strategist with Crestview Strategy. So what we're going to do is start off with helping to set the stage a little bit and give you a better understanding of the Canadian LGBT travel market. So earlier this year, CGLCC, in partnership with Tourism HR Canada and Crestview Strategy, with the support of the federal government, conducted a national research study looking at the travel habits and motivators of the Canadian LGBT traveler. So Mina's going to go through some of those findings, and then following that, Philip's going to share some insights around the work that THRC and CGLCC, again with the federal government, are doing to support Canada's tourism industry become market ready. So before we do that, we have a few remarks from the Honourable Melanie Joly, Minister of Economic Development and Official Languages.
Bonjour tout le monde. Hello everyone. I would like to first thank the organizers for hosting this event and thank you for participating in it. More than ever, the message of your summit, the power of connection, is crucial. We need your ideas, we need your passion, we need your willingness to connect and collaborate. And events like this are essential to strengthening our economic resiliency. I know these are challenging times for all Canadians and especially for tourism businesses. I want you to know that we're here and we're working with you to support the sector. LGBTQ2 tourism businesses are incredibly important to Canada's tourism sector, and we're taking action to support you and all the LGBTQ community. You can find all the information about our programs online or through our regional development agencies. If there's one message I can leave you with today, it is that we're here for you. My team is in close contact with Canada's LGBT plus Chamber of Commerce and LGBTQ2 stakeholders from across Canada to address the impacts of COVID-19. So let's work together to restart and rebuild for the future. Take good care. Yes.
Great, thanks, Minister Joly. And Mina, over to you.
Thanks, Daryl. And thanks everyone for joining us this morning. I'm Mina Ayer. I'm a senior data scientist with Crestview Strategy. And today I'm really excited to be officially unveiling the results of the 2020 LGBTQ2 travel study that we conducted earlier this year with the CGLCC and Tourism HR Canada. Before we get started, I kind of wanted just to make a few quick remarks. Particularly around why this study means so much to me personally. I remember kind of being so excited about conducting this research, not just because it's sort of a genuinely interesting topic, but also because LGBTQ2 Canadians are seriously underrepresented and understudied when it comes to travel and tourism. In fact, over the past decade, there have been precisely 3 studies that dug deep into the underlying factors that drive LGBTQ2 Canadian travelers' motivations. All 3 of the studies were conducted by the CGLCC. So that gives you a sense of just how crucial a role the Chamber plays in ensuring that LGBT+ voices are represented across every aspect of Canadian society. So, having said that, our fundamental objectives kind of going into the study were to really sort of size the LGBTQ2 Canadians' contributions to travel and tourism sector, and to kind of unearth some key factors to determine, where LGBTQ2 Canadians choose to travel, where they choose to stay, and what sorts of activities they choose to engage in on their vacations. Before we get started, just a few methodological details. We partnered with our good friends at Leger to sort of survey LGBTQ2 Canadians that traveled that went on vacation at least once a year. The study results aggregate findings from over 1,400 LGBT+ Canadians across the country. The survey was in the field between March 5th and March 22nd. So yes, we do have some COVID-19 related data points that I'll get to a little bit later. So let's kind of start with the basics. Estimates suggest that LGBTQ2 Canadians tend to outspend Canadians in general on vacations. As you can tell here, on average, LGBTQ2 Canadians spend a little less than $1,900 per trip. This is sizable compared to the $265 average that Canadians in general tend to spend on every vacation trip. When it comes to overseas trips, this number goes up for LGBTQ2 Canadians. Their average expenditure on overseas trips is about 87% higher at roughly $3,500. High-income earners tend to typically outspend other income categories when it comes to LGBTQ2 Canadians. Over half of LGBTQ2 Canadians, high-income earners, spend over 50%, spend over $2,000 per trip, with 7% reporting that they spend over $5,000 per trip. These are pretty sizable numbers, and we wanted to estimate what this could translate to in terms of the overall total potential spent by the LGBTQ2 community. We crunched the numbers, and guess what? This translates to a whopping $12 billion. This is literally billions in potential travel expenditure that the LGBTQ2 community can contribute to the entire travel and tourism industry on an annual basis. What's even more impressive is really the continued increase in travel spending. Barring 2020, when we sort of expect the spending to perhaps decrease slightly, LGBTQ2 Canadians have been consistently increasing their travel spend. The average trip expenditure, for instance, has increased by over 54% over the past decade. This outperforms the inflation rate during the same period of time. So that gives you a sense of just how much this community tends to spend on travel and tourism. So now that I've kind of grabbed your attention with these big numbers, let's sort of start talking about what it is that LGBTQ2 Canadians look for when choosing a destination, accommodation, and holiday activities. So when it comes to choosing a destination, safety is still paramount for an overwhelming majority of LGBTQ2 Canadians. You can see here that we've listed top three factors: safety, cost and value for money, and climate. And all of them are pretty close when it comes to making decisions about travel destinations. However, when we sort of start segmenting this data by factors that respondents cited as being the most critical, safety clearly outranked everything else. Nearly 60% of the survey respondents stated that safety is the most important, the most critical factor when they tend to choose their travel destinations. Closely tied to the idea of safety is trust. So when we prodded our survey respondents a little bit more about what sorts of sources they consult when picking a destination and planning a trip, it was immediately clear to us that reputation and trust matter a lot. So much so that 76% stated that they're opening to traveling to a variety of destinations, so long as they have an LGBT plus friendly reputation. Over half suggested that they consult family and friends when planning a leisure trip. And 45% indicated that they always consult LGBTQ2 specific resources when choosing and planning a vacation. And yes, this includes influencers as well. This theme of trust sort of carries over to accommodations in some way as well. When it comes to choosing a place to stay, reviews and ratings clearly sort of influence a large majority of Canadians. But even more importantly, it is accommodations really where LGBTQ2 Canadians look for cost savings. In other words, the survey results sort of potentially indicate that when looking to stick to a budget, a majority of LGBTQ2 Canadian travelers tend to cut back on expenses by choosing a more affordable accommodation option. For instance, when given a choice between comfort and price, over 2/3 of the respondents indicate that they would choose an accommodation that minimized their expenses and allowed them to stick to their budgets. And LGBTQ2 Canadians tend to find these cost savings through different avenues. Though 53% indicate that they make full use of their loyalty programs and rewards points, this is really just 6 percentage points over those that say that they typically choose to stay in Airbnb or local bed and breakfast. This is sort of understandable given that depending on the destination, any one of these choices could end up being the cheapest or the most affordable option at play. So we've kind of talked a little bit about choosing destinations and accommodations. What about vacation activities? Once again, LGBTQ2 preferences are resoundingly clear. Over 3/4 of the respondents stated that they typically like to try out new local cuisines, followed by visiting popular tourist attractions and soaking in the local arts and culture scene. LGBTQ2 Canadians have discerning taste, and the survey responses hint that they expect elevated experiences during their vacations. So for instance, event-driven tourism is not really a factor for LGBTQ2 Canadians planning vacation activities. Over 2/3 state that events such as pride parades, sports, or LGBTQ2 themed parties by themselves are not particularly sought after when LGBTQ2 Canadians tend to think about their vacation trips. The other interesting bit for us here really was that there appears to be a pretty strong correlation between activity preferences and the places that LGBTQ2 Canadians tend to typically travel to. So it shouldn't come as a surprise, but Ontario, Quebec, and BC are pretty much top choices for LGBTQ2 Canadians when they choose to travel across Canada. Over 1/3 of travelers tend to take leisure trips within their home provinces, especially Ontario and Quebec, whereas LGBTQ2 Canadians out west and in the prairies appear to be a little bit more willing and flexible to traveling to their neighboring provinces. So now on to the million-dollar question that I know you all have been waiting for. Can these trends hold in sort of the context of the pandemic? Well, for starters, 34% of our respondents indicated that they expect to travel less in 2020. Now, I'll add a note of caution here, just to reiterate that this survey was out in the field between March 5th and March 22nd. So what that really means is that during that point in time, if you remember, though I know days have been sort of blending together now, but the pandemic was a rapidly evolving situation at that point in time. So it's kind of quite likely that some of the respondents may have underestimated the impact of or the short-term impact of COVID-19 on their travel plans in 2020. Now, having said that, going back to the data point on the 34%. So of the 34% that indicated that they expect to travel less this year, 51% indicated that COVID-19 is the key factor impacting their travel plans in 2020. Once again, potentially an underestimation, given the timing of the survey in this field. I know this really doesn't paint a pretty picture of what's up for the tourism sector, at least in the short term, but I would sort of add almost a silver lining here. And Daryl will speak to this a little bit more in detail. But we are increasingly seeing studies globally that show that LGBTQ2 travelers tend to rebound faster than other segments of the society, and that this time may be no different. In fact, in our survey, over 90% indicated that they intend to take at least one trip within Canada in 2020. Metropolitan cities continue to be a favorite, with Montreal topping the list, followed by Halifax, Vancouver, and Calgary, and in close second, third, and fourth places there. So what is this? What do all of these sort of data points really mean for the industry as a whole? So while I would say that the pandemic does present some immediate challenges, the study sort of really just provides and highlights some key factors that fundamentally drive Canadian LGBTQ2 travelers' decisions. Given these trends, how best can tourism operators and businesses sort of leverage these insights to cater to the LGBT plus travelers in the short and the long term? My fellow panelists, Phil and Daryl, will speak to some really interesting programs they are rolling out to help the Canadian tourism industry reach out and connect with LGBTQ2 travelers. I hope that this presentation was useful and as enjoyable for you as it was for me to personally conduct it. Once again, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Daryl, over to you.
That's great. Thanks so much, Mina. You did an amazing job on this research, and I know that we really appreciate all the work that Crestview Strategy and partners put into this, and so that was great. Just trying to figure out how to turn the presentation off.
Maybe.
There we go. So thanks for that, Mina. I think everything that you just talked about really reinforces the fact that this is an important market to look at. So for tourism operators, for destinations, this is a market that they should be considering. So I just want to build on the points that you made specifically around COVID-19. I think that I'm going to reference some data that just came out, I think 2 weeks ago, from our partners at IGLTA. So they did a survey focused specifically on LGBT leisure travel in the face of COVID. So our research, as Mina pointed out, we were in market just at the start of COVID. So the data, I think, although very important, I think that this updated research that came out of our global partners just reinforces some of the things that Mina talked about. So one of the key findings that came out of that study was that 2/3 of LGBT travelers said that they would be comfortable traveling again before the end of 2020. So this is really in line with a lot of the previous data that we've seen. When we look back at major events like SARS or 9/11, we found that of those markets that rebounded quickly, the LGBT travel market was one that tended to be one of the fastest to rebound. So I think that that's really important to keep in mind, and that just then again compounds Mina's point that this is a market that our industry should really be looking at. There's a quote that came from my friend John at IGLTA, and it said that this market, it should be a valued part of tourism operators' recovery plans. And I think that that's a very succinct way to say, not because of COVID, we need to be looking at other options. Our industry should be looking at other options and opportunities. And this market just reinforces that it should be part of the recovery plan. So our federal government is also in line with that as well. And so I'm going to turn it over to Phil to maybe talk a little bit about the federal government's approach to LGBT tourism and some of the things that they're doing and that we've been doing on this.
Well, thank you, Daryl. It's a real pleasure being part of this panel. That data, by the way, Mina, was so timely and so helpful. So I think that it'll show that it adds up to some of the thinking that was done at the federal government long before COVID as well. So in 2019, the Government of Canada announced its most recent federal tourism growth strategy, and it's called Creating Middle-Class Jobs. In that document, Prime Minister Trudeau states that Canada is a world-class tourism destination, and Canada's tourism sector is hard at work to meet and exceed the expectations of visitors from around the world and across Canada. He went on to say that the country is strong, not in spite of our diversity, but because of it. And no matter the faith we profess, we were born, or what we were born with, and what language we speak, or whom we love, we are all equal members of this country. And this is the Canada that Canadians are proud of and want to share with the world. In that same document at the time, Minister Joly, Minister of Tourism, Official Languages and La Francophonie, added that through tourism, Canadians express our love of country and community pride, which we are only too happy to share with the world. So although that was in 2019, not that long ago, some of those ideas still are very much on the forefront today. The fact is that Canada consistently ranks among the best countries on earth with the highest quality of life, topping the charts for happiness and inclusiveness. And indeed, it's tourism that is central to helping define that Canadian experience, not just for visitors, but for people that live in Canada. I pulled a few words from further from the tourism strategy, just worth noting here. It went on to say tourism in Canada is as safe, is reliable infrastructure, has a wide range of exceptional cultural and recreation activities, and beyond metropolitan centers, Canada's smaller towns and communities offer their own singular experiences and attractions, including authentic Indigenous tourism experiences. And they're also the gateways to globally famous national parks, heritage sites, and the country's vast iconic wilderness. Clearly, this strategy was considering very carefully what it meant for the LGBT market. A cornerstone of the federal tourism strategy is to stimulate and diversify Canada's tourism products and experiences. The government established what at the time they called the Canadian Experiences Fund and prioritized 5 key product lines for investment. Inclusive tourism is one of these, with a focus on growing the LGBTQ market. And this is where Tourism HR Canada has partnered with the Chamber on a multi-year comprehensive pan-Canadian project that's intended or designed to increase the market readiness capacity of existing and new LGBT businesses, and also to increase the number of destinations targeting the LGBT markets. And with COVID, we've been doing a lot of thinking about the impact and what it means. And we can all agree that probably more than ever, the idea of having market-ready tools to prepare for this market are more important than ever. A quick mention of some of the things that we were looking at in the program and that we've produced, and some of where this is going. So as a toolbox, there's quite a few features in here, and I'm going to highlight just a few of them because there are many more, but because of time, it's probably not worth listing all of them. But a few features. There is something referred to as an inclusive procurement resource guide. It's a new tool that will help tourism operators implement inclusive procurement practices. There's a market resource guide for helping market LGBT to the traveler. There's a community engagement toolkit. There's a business case for helping build an LGBT inclusive market. There's developing a diversity inclusion strategy. That's complemented by things like service webinar series and video series and testimonials to help people. The plan includes additional things that we're currently working on that will come out a little bit later. Some work on trans inclusion, the hosting of inclusive events, the developing of LGBT products and tours. Indeed, there are several other things there. Also, what we're doing in this project is building on an existing CGLCC program, one that's been quite successful, and I understand is also a feature of one of the other seminars for this conference, and that's the Youth Entrepreneur Mentorship Program. This, of course, has become a cornerstone initiative, and some work has been done to update that program and include further diversity material in it. One of the things that we're very excited about as this summer is we're going to be doing some updating to the destination audits and assessment processes, and also down the road, there's an alloy accreditation programs in the works. So you can see what we've been able to invest in with the federal funding has been quite inclusive, quite vast, and is going to do an awful lot to help build the markets. And all of this builds on existing networks. It's informed by the research and best practices, and it's involved extensive consultation with the LGBT stakeholders. We're really all very excited by the prospects of it. So a final note here. Tourism businesses need to adapt to this new reality. Our research shows us that there is one key thing that everyone will need to do, and that is overhaul their business plans, target new markets, especially domestic ones, for the next 2 years. This will be essential to sustaining what they do and to creating growth. And what we can see from this research with the LGBT market, it's one of the most lucrative tourism markets to tap into. For more information on the work plan, indeed, some of the information you've heard here, do go to the CGLCC website, so it's at cglcc.ca/tourism, and there's a registration form where businesses can express their interest in learning more about these opportunities coming over the next few months. So thanks, Daryl. I'll hand it over to you now.
Great. Thanks, Phil, for kind of providing that overview and that background. I just want to ask you a quick question, because I know that you've done a lot in other areas as it relates to market readiness in some other individual segments, and so maybe you can speak to that. And is there a lot of similarity between some of the other market readiness work that you've been working on in the past and the stuff that we're doing right now?
Thank you, Daryl. I think that's a very important question, and one that can provide a fair amount of interest and insight. We have been working with a few other markets, and I'll mention one in particular, and that's the Indigenous tourism market. In some ways, there are similarities insofar as what Canada has to offer with these markets is quite unique to what is being offered elsewhere globally. Not only do we have all the features of being a safe destination and what the sort of the data that Nina has been able to extract, there's also very unique cultural dimensions in Canada with what is being offered through things like the LGBT market, the Indigenous tourism markets, culinary, and other things. So we're very fortunate. What makes us a little bit unique, by the way, and I don't want to get too deep in this, but what makes us quite unique is that there's a long history of collaboration amongst all of the stakeholders across Canada. So we not only provide a unique flavor to a Canadian context here, but it's also quite diverse. You can go across to Canada and experience very different things, but still within a cohesive, culturally appropriate kind of context. And so those are sort of some of the similarities. And by the way, on the LGBT product specifically, what we know is it's one of the markets that has such potential for growth and is really under-tapped or underutilized. So I think there's a lot of potential there.
Great, thanks for that. And I just want to acknowledge the partnership between CGLCC and THRC, because I think it is a partnership that we've been building for the last couple of years. I mean, our personal relationship, Phil, we go way back, but I really value the partnership between our two organizations, and the work that THRC is doing is really impressive. And I just want to give you the chance to speak to a little bit of the new programs or new products that you've just been rolling out, because you have some great COVID-19 resources available for the tourism industry. So do you want to just quickly tell those that are listening kind of what some of those things are?
Thank you, Daryl. Look, I was going to take the time to acknowledge this partnership as well. Working with the Chamber has been really great, and it's great to have the long history in working with you and with some of the parties that we're involved with. So I can only concur on that. Look, one of the main interests of our organization, and indeed it's central to our mandate, is to help ensure that businesses have a vibrant workforce and that they are responsive to some of the new demands. Couldn't be more true than now with COVID, given that it has increased the level of complexity in terms of skill needs and work like revised business plans and a bunch of other things. So to help the industry, what we've done is a few things. First of all, a cornerstone is being labor market research. We've been able to track and look at the trends around what's happening with skills, what's happening with workers and labor, and what demands are in the future. We've got very robust data and information on that, also gratefully funded by the federal government. Our website is rich with that information, and we've been tracking and monitoring the trend over the COVID period. I encourage you to go take a look at that. It shows what it means in local markets and also nationally. What we do see, there are some changes for sure in terms of what will happen in terms of skills and demands. I can get into that more if we want to, but I'll suspend it for now. The other thing that we've been doing, of course, is producing something, what we call the Recovery Toolkit. This is about to be launched next week. There's a bunch of products that have led up to that. Effectively, it's training tools, it's templates, it's accessing expert advice, and a number of other things that will help tourism business of all size, particularly small and medium, access things that are very practical to help them with rebounding, recovering, and ultimately with resilient measures. So this has bumped up some of the work we've had before and really starts to look at how to manage crisis and to come out of the situation that we've all been plagued with over the last several months. I must add, Daryl, that a lot of this research was done, and the actual content also did involve a lot of time with your stakeholders too. Like, we do not design our design programs without doing a lot of work right in the marketplace, and that did involve a lot of time talking very specifically to LGBT business owner operators. So I'm confident that what we're producing here, both in terms of format and what the content includes, will be very pertinent and relevant. And finally, one other note about that, we'll include a link for this group so they can see where to find it. But it is, of course, available in both languages and all for free. It's all about helping make sure that companies can rebound and grow. And indeed, there's a whole lot more data behind that. So training, research, there's a bunch of other tools as well, but I don't want to take up all our time with my comments. I'll leave it to those key things for now.
Well, I think that just reinforces that the work that THRC is doing is not never ending, and you're producing some amazing resources. So for those of you that are on the call that are tourism operators, destinations, I really encourage you to take a look at the resources that THRC is putting out there. Some amazing resources to support your business as they're recovering from COVID-19. So thank you for highlighting some of those, Phil. One of the things I just wanted to, because it's kind of near and dear to my heart, and you talked a little bit about one of the things that we're working on is around the Youth Entrepreneur Program. So we launched this program 2 years ago, but what we're doing here as part of this initiative is that we're really working to support young entrepreneurs with a focus that are interested in starting or growing their business, specifically within the tourism industry. So this is a great program to really help to encourage more youth to look at starting businesses in this industry. And so I know, as you mentioned, Phil, that there is a session dedicated to this tomorrow. So I'd encourage any of you that might be interested in learning a little bit more to tune into that tomorrow. So what we wanted to do is make sure that we had chance for some Q&A. So as mentioned in the feed on the right, you can post any questions in the right-hand side by just clicking on the little question mark there. I see that there's a lot of people that are asking around the research, and so we'll have to talk about how we're kind of putting this research out. It will be made accessible. This was kind of the first time that the research has been presented, so we will make this available. You want to talk a little bit around, there's a couple of questions around 2021 travel plan, and also around international travel. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure, thanks. So in terms of I'm so glad people found this helpful. So thank you so much for bearing with me while I geeked out over everything data. In terms of international travel, we did have a few questions that considered that. I don't have the exact stats off the top of my head, but what I do remember very distinctly is in 2019, a number of the respondents stated that basically Europe was their number one sort of choice of destination outside of Canada in terms of where they went. And in 2020, however, I will completely caveat this by the fact that those intentions have probably changed. But in 2020, so as far as the data goes, A lot of people, quite a few of the respondents expressed interest in obviously going to the Caribbean, but also Southeast Asia. So that was kind of another interesting highlight that sort of came out of the presentation. Once the sort of report is sort of made available, it sort of those details are sort of spelled out a lot more clearly. So when that gets posted, I'm sure everyone will find out about it. The second question on 2021 travel stats and plans. Unfortunately, we didn't really have any questions that specifically asked about 2021 plans. It was just more general around what are your plans for this year or over the next 12 months, which sort of leads into 2021, but not enough that I would feel comfortable talking about how these findings translate to 2021. If I had to hazard a guess, what I would really just say is that as the tourism sector picks up, and as we've seen from other research out there that LGBTQ2 tourism tends to sort of pick up a little bit faster, we could potentially see some of the trips that had to be canceled, postponed, coming back sort of on people's lists, at least within Canada. International travel is a whole different ballgame, really. Depends on how the COVID situation evolves in the near future.
Great, thanks, Mina. I see that there's a quick question around the age range for young entrepreneurs. So that age is it's a big range, 18 to 39. So I still don't fall into that category, unfortunately, anymore. But we did make it, and this follows. It's in line with some of the other federal programs that are out there. So so if you're between 18 and 39, they are eligible for the youth program. Where can we access these resources and programs? So as Philip mentioned, we're rolling out a great series of resources and programs over the next 9 months. And so we're going to start making those accessible through CGLCC's website, starting hopefully in early August. So just stay tuned. For now, you can visit our cglcc.ca/tourism, where we'll keep you updated on a lot of the activities. And again, as Philip mentioned, there's also an opportunity for you to register your interest. So if you're a tourism operator, a destination, you can register your interest to learn more about some of the information sessions that we're going to be doing, some of the destination audits, diversity and inclusion training. So there's a few options there that you can register your interest for, and we'll keep you posted on that. So I think, was there anything else, Philip or Mina, that you would like to add? I think we've kind of covered all the questions.
I think I see there's another question that just came in. Did the study reveal reasons for travelers to confidently travel again? If so, what are they? I kind of wish that it did. Again, like we said, we sort of put this out in the field when the pandemic wasn't even officially termed as a pandemic. So unfortunately, we really weren't able to sort of dive into that. But hey, I mean, could be a topic for investigation pretty soon. What I would say from what I've seen across other general studies, not LGBTQ2 specific studies, is specifically what we're starting to see is some explicit sort of communication on how places like hotels, etc., are sort of ensuring or doing their best, or the steps that they're taking to reduce the chances of transmission, to reduce the chances of infection. So that's something that I've been seeing from general studies. But as for this study, no, not really. We didn't really have any of those questions in there just because of the timing of the study.
Thanks. So we will make these recordings all available. So every session from the summit over the next 5 days will be uploaded into our YouTube channel. I believe, I'm not sure, I won't lie and give you a date because I'm not sure my team will not be happy with my promises. So we will, again, we'll keep you posted on that. Just wanted to flag, because somebody mentioned this here, is that the federal government and various provincial governments as well have been rolling out a lot of different initiatives, funding programs to support those specifically within the tourism industry. And so I think, Phil, you have a lot on your website, a lot of resources specifically for tourism-based businesses. And so I would encourage those of you to visit THRC's website, as well as TIAC has been a great resource for making sure that they're communicating the various program funding opportunities for businesses. We at the Chamber are continuing to advocate for LGBT businesses, and specifically those, also those within the tourism industry. And so we'll continue to ensure that there's support for our LGBT tourism owners and operators. So between, I think, all of our organizations, we're continuing to make sure that we're getting that information out there and providing those resources and links for you.
And Daryl, if I can please add to that, one of the things that is fantastic is that the federal government has been working very closely with all of the national organizations that were mentioned and others, and they've been very sincere about wanting to hear from us on how well these programs are working. And we've been a regular conduit of information by giving them an idea of what our members are saying and what you're telling us. So we indeed are including links to all these programs on our websites and maintaining them, but we're also very interested in hearing from you on how well they're working, if there's other needs, and so on, because what we're doing is helping contribute, like put your voice back at the national table with the federal government. So I encourage you to think about that as well. If you're not finding what you need, or you need clarity, or you're working with these programs and you still feel that there's something else that might be required, let us know, because what we'll continue to do is serve as that conduit to feed that back to the federal government, and hopefully, as they've been so far, they'll be responsive and try to make adjustments where it's possible. I must say they've been fantastic in lending an ear and focusing a lot on the interest in our sector. And so we're in a very fortunate time at the moment. But as we all recover from COVID, I think we're all still trying to navigate through these areas and try to struggle through some of this. And we don't have all the answers, but we're certainly all trying to work together to look for better solutions.
Absolutely. Great. Thanks, Philip. So I think that this covers it. So I want to, again, thank you, Philip. Thank you, Mina, for taking the time today to share some great information and insights to our attendees here. I would, again, encourage each of you that are tuning in to visit our website at cglcc.ca/tourism to find out the most up-to-date information on some of these programs that we highlighted here today. Again, we'll make sure that we publish the research which Mina talked about, and there's a lot more information there. Mina just kind of scratched the surface in a very short period of time. And so, again, feel free to reach out, and we'll make sure that, because I know that there's a few people who have asked for contact information, so we'll make Mina's information accessible for everybody as well. So again, I would like to thank you for joining us on this session today. For those of you that may not have seen the rest of the schedule, we have an action-packed day ahead of us. So I would encourage you, the next session, the keynote starts in about 17 minutes, so you have time to go get another coffee and get rehydrated. So look forward to welcoming you throughout the rest of the day and throughout the rest of the summit. And please, if you have the opportunity, we are accepting donations. This is my task now, to ask for money. If you enjoyed this session, we do have a donate button just below you in the description field. Feel free to make a donation if you are able to. And please share this information with those of your colleagues within the industry, because what we're doing here is really trying to make sure that our Canadian tourism industry is inclusive and successful. And so we want to try to make sure that the work that we're doing is reaching as many individuals within the industry as possible. So we encourage you to share this information as we're rolling it out. So thank you for joining us. Thank you again, Philip. Thank you, Mina, for joining us. And have a great rest of the day, everyone.
Thank you.